Hello everyone and welcome to a very special Wildcard Wednesday, because today I'm going to be partly cashing in on the search results of Mission to the Unknown, as the BBC are releasing on their official Doctor Who YouTube channel the university students' reconstruction of a new version of Mission to the Unknown. At the time you are all seeing this, you might have already seen it. At the time I'm recording, it's not out yet, but I will certainly be watching it, and I am sure that it is going to be an absolutely spectacular reconstruction, so be sure to go and check it out. But today, as I said, I'm going to be cashing in on the search results because I thought I would give you all an update about my Mission to the Unknown figure animation. As you can see, I'm joined by some of the figures from my animation, or that will be used in my animation. For those wondering, because I know people are going to ask, yes, this is a First Doctor console. It's been 3D printed. A huge thank you to Stuart Campbell for doing that. This will be forming part of a future Live from the Workshop exclusive to my Patreon, so if you want to see my very first classic console room diorama coming together, you do need to be a supporter of Patreon, but I am very much looking forward to that. And obviously some of these other figures are already up on my Patreon as exclusive Live from the Workshop videos. But today's video is actually going to be the first part in a making of style documentary, and I decided that it would be nice to give all of my subscribers to my YouTube an update on the animation, but future parts of this making of will be exclusive to my Patreon, so if you want to see where things go from here, you will need to be a subscriber to that. But today I'm going to be answering some of the more commonly asked questions, and questions that I know people want to know about my figure animation. So let's get into it. The figure animation will be released when it is completed. That is very much just the only sort of answer that I can give, because my figure animation has always been about producing an animation that I am proud of, that I am feeling that it's producing an animation that is what I first envisioned. And when it comes to figure animations, there are some absolutely fantastic things out there, and people have done things that I certainly would never be able to do. And I've taken a lot of inspiration and a lot of admiration from things that other people have done. But I personally, when I sort of thought about doing a figure animation, I knew that I wanted it to be a very fluid thing. I wanted it to really do look as close to something that would have been sort of on screen in terms of the movement of the figures and things like that as possible. And obviously, using figures, there are limitations because of their articulation and things like that, but ultimately I'd rather take longer in terms of production and put out something that I am immensely proud of, rather than sort of cut corners and make something that I feel could have been better. So ideally I'd like to get the animation out within the next year or two at most, but you know, it all depends on the times of production. I'm still very much in stages of making all the figures and putting everything together, although I am doing animation tests at the same time. So I can't really give a concrete answer, but it is something that is still ongoing, and it is nice to have all the support for it, and it really does sort of, you know, drive me towards getting it, you know, really getting it completed and getting it done as soon as I can. Well, as I previously said, I'm currently in the process of still doing the sort of pre-production stages. I'm still putting together all the figures and things like that. I'm still making them, designing them, still storyboarding things out. I've got the first draft of the script finished, so I've got to storyboard that. But then there's also things such as building the sets and also doing animation tests. But I'm kind of, to try and sort of speed up the process without losing, you know, without trying to rush it, I'm doing lots of things at the same time. So whilst I'm making the figures, I'm also doing the animation test, I'm also going through the script and storyboarding out sort of things I want to do, and also designing things like the sets and the props, because there will be sort of slight elements of live action in with it. So it also means building actual physical props, but at the same time I'm also having to sort of design the sets and put them together, because I haven't got a huge amount of space to film in, so I'm sort of building the sets so they can be used sort of double scene. So on the one side of a wall it could be a TARDIS roundel console room, but then you flip it over and it's the inside of the spaceship. And even things like just doing the jungle scenes, rather than using sort of pasted just pictures on cardboard, I'm actually wanting to use proper trays with actual grass and plants in it to make it look as realistic as possible and to really get a good sort of sense of movement and natural sort of looks to them. So it is something that is, you know, it is taking its time, but the actual the easiest way I can answer is the current state of the animation is that we are well into sort of production stages of it. It's, you know, it's gone. Originally it started out as an idea, and now it's beyond an idea. It is actually in production. So the current stage of it, or unless you're a subscriber to my Patreon, you won't know this, but the current stages of it is that it is still very much in production, and I'm very pleased with the progress that I'm making on it. A lot of people have asked me about auditioning for roles, and the simple answer is no, you can't right now, because at the moment, whilst I'm still in the production stages of, you know, going through the script, building the sets, putting together the figures and things like that, I haven't got anywhere around to sort of doing voice roles and things like that. There's a few people on board already in terms of doing voices and things, and it's really nice to have them on board because it sort of saves me a lot of time later. But until I actually get round to the stages of considering doing the filming, and then potentially doing the voices then, and then fitting the shots around the voices, it's not something that I have any immediate concern with sorting out now. So there will be chances for people to audition in future. I will be holding open audition castings through my channel. Obviously there will be very set characters, so for example the astronauts are meant to be grown men, so there will be age limits on some roles and things like that, because I don't want, you know, someone who's meant to be 35 being played by someone who's 8, because it just, the voice won't fit the role. It's just, you know, it has to be sort of, you know, there's a lot of, if I want to produce the animation that I can see doing, there do have to be sort of rules in place in terms of what things, you know, what people can do what and how things come together. So, you know, I will just say this now, that if you are a younger viewer, then there probably won't be that many roles open, because all of the characters are sort of adults and things like that, and I don't necessarily want a child trying to put on an adult voice, and it just, you know, I don't want to exclude anybody, but at the same time I don't want to have an adult figure, an adult character with a child's voice. It would just sound very strange. I think it would just detract from the animation. So overall, I will say there will be open auditions for people, but at present time I am not currently looking for any voices, but the moment I am, you will all be the first to know here on my channel. Absolutely, I'm continuing with my animation. As you can see, you know, I'm still getting parts and sorting parts and things like that, because ultimately the new reconstruction that has been done by the university students, and also a lot of people involved from actual Doctor Who themselves. As I said, at the time of recording this, I haven't seen it yet, but what I have seen, trailers and things like that, looks absolutely amazing, and I'm sure it's going to be fantastic. But ultimately, that is a very faithful reconstruction of the missing episode, and I think that's fantastic. It's something that everyone wants to see. I certainly want to see it. But my animation, because I'm using specific figures and I'm having sort of my own styles and elements of things in it, it's not going to be exactly the same as it was as what was seen on screen. So my animation is going to be my own sort of take on it, and it's also obviously going to have additional scenes of the Doctor and Companion in the TARDIS on the special edition versions, and also a couple of my own scenes that I've written myself. So the actual animation, the actual reconstruction, live action reconstruction that we're going to see very soon, or that you may already have seen, is going to be a faithful reconstruction. My animation is going to be my own take on things. So that's the reason why I'm still continuing it, is because it is something that is going to be different, very different to what we see on screen with the official reconstruction. Yes, the animation will be free for everyone to view on YouTube, or at least one version of it will, because the standard black and white version, without any additional scenes, this is just as Mission to the Unknown was seen on screen, more or less. That is going to be the black and white version that is going to be available and free for everyone to view online, and that is not going to change. However, there will be a colour version, and black and white and colour versions exclusive to my Patreon with extended scenes that will be, as I said, exclusive to my Patreon, and you will only be able to see those if you are a Patreon subscriber. And as I said, those are going to be, there's going to be the colour version of the standard film that's on YouTube. There is then going to be an extended version, which is going to be in colour and black and white, and also with additional scenes. So everyone will be able to see this finished animation in its Mission to the Unknown standard format. But if you would like to see the extended version or colour versions, then you will need to be a Patreon subscriber to see those. The project came about in that for many years people have asked me and said, oh, you make custom figures, you should do figure animations and things like that. But the thing is with figure animations is it was a lot of work for something which I had at the time very little interest in, and it's not something that I ever really thought I'd want to do, because I wouldn't necessarily want to do, you know, a reconstruction of something that still existed, and it was also a fact of time and money and cost and things like that, and it was also the fact that, again, the animations that a lot of people make are absolutely fantastic and brilliant, and I've learned a lot from watching them, but if I was going to make an animation, I had a very specific idea about what I wanted to make, and it just wasn't something that was easily very feasible at the time. And it was also the fact that I was just not coming across ideas that I was interested in. The idea of doing Mission to the Unknown was because it was completely missing, not only completely missing, but it was also, it gave me opportunities to do things that I wouldn't have otherwise done, such as doing a classic console room, or doing a figure animation, making something that was completely missing. And so it gave me an open book as to what I wanted to do. I could add extra bits in, I could expand on it, and I could make it my own thing. And it was sort of, the nice thing about it was that for me, if I'm reconstructing, let's say I was reconstructing some Ninth Doctor episodes that we'd seen on TV, we'd already seen them on TV, and I wouldn't feel the need to make them in figure format. With, let's say, a story of my own, if I wrote my own figure animation story, then I'd have to sit there and write the script and do everything, and it's, you know, I find it sort of, I get writer's block quite easily with just my audio series writing that, and that's just audio, so storyboarding out an entire figure animation, it was a lot of work, as I said, for something that was just of very little interest to me. But with doing something like Mission to the Unknown, it meant that I already had the base story, so expanding on it wasn't going to be difficult because it wouldn't take long to do my own bits. And then because it's missing, it's something that's not necessarily been seen, but what does still exist, we get an idea of what it was. And so it's sort of all the elements came together in one that I had. It was an idea that it ticked all the right boxes and had very little to almost no cons that put me off doing it. So it was certainly something that you know, I know people wanted to see me doing. It was also something that, again, I could do exclusively through a Patreon, so it meant that I could also get additional support from people, which has been invaluable in terms of putting this animation together. And then it also meant that I could offer people exclusive content for supporting my Patreon, whilst at the same time still giving the end result, or at least one of the end results, to everyone free on YouTube. Well, as I previously said, the thing with Mission to the Unknown was that because it was an entirely missing episode, it meant that it was an open book, you know, that it gave me free rein to expand on it, do what I wanted to do. But at the same time, it meant that the story was already there, and so it was a lot easier for me to write in my own pieces. And it was something which I think, when I looked at a lot of other figure animations, and people have done sort of figure animations of an audio or reconstructions of a TV series, with reconstructions of a TV episode, they are sort of quite limited in what they can do compared to what was on screen as it still exists. With an audio series episode, it was something which everyone can sort of have their own take on it and how characters looked and things like that, but at the end of the day it was still the same thing. Whereas with a Mission to the Unknown, it is the same thing, but as I said, everyone can do something a bit different because everyone could see something a bit different in that, and it's similar to an audio series. But I think the thing with an audio series, weirdly, is an audio series has absolutely or very little visuals, and so everything can be very different, but in a weird kind of way sometimes it ends up being the same. Whereas with Mission to the Unknown, because there are images of what it was, everyone knows what it was, and therefore everyone expects to see that. So when you do something different, you kind of sort of, it adds an element of surprise to it. So I suppose it sounds a bit weird when I put it that way, but it's certainly logic that seemed to work when I came up with the idea. And as I said before, it was just one of those things that it just ticked all the right boxes, and it just sort of, it was exactly what I wanted to do at the time that I decided I wanted to do an animation. It was just looking through ideas, and I thought, now that's one that will really work well. Well, as I previously said, I've watched a lot of other people's figure animations on YouTube, and they're very good. They're certainly very good, but weirdly, that's not what inspired me, because what inspired me, in a way, couldn't be further removed, well, not that far removed from figure animations, but certainly not something that I ever thought about when I was originally enjoyed these things, is I was inspired by, you could effectively say, model railways, the model era Thomas the Tank Engine, and things like Thunderbirds, and just even Red Dwarf, the model shots in Red Dwarf, and model shots in sort of TV shows, sci-fis and things like that, because I loved the fact that, I think for me it's like when you look at something that's CG today, it doesn't matter how good it is, you can tell it's CG. I mean, there are some, to be fair, which are really difficult, you're amazed they're CG, and that shows how far it's come on, but the thing with the model shot is you could always tell it was real. It was always looked real because it was real, and it was sort of that sort of thing was what inspired me to do a figure animation, in that I wanted to produce something which you could tell was a model, but it looked real. And so that was the idea behind doing things like, so for example, the jungle scenes in my animation are going to be done actually outside using real plants to make it look real. And things I mentioned about using live action things, you know, there's going to be close-up shots of, spoiler alert, when Mark Corey shoots somebody, he shoots the guy who's attacking him in Mission to the Unknown, I'm going to actually have a live action gun, or at least a model sci-fi gun live action, which will then zoom out and be matted into the figure. And that inspiration was things like Thunderbirds, where they used to use, you know, live action hands and things like that for close-ups. And so I wanted to have that in my animation because it just makes it something a bit different, but it's also a homage to something which inspired me. And I think anyone who's considering getting into doing figure animations and things like that should certainly consider doing things like looking at things like Thunderbirds and things like that, because there is a lot in there that is going to be of interest and certainly of inspiration, for lack of a better word. You know, it's going to inspire them to actually create these sorts of things, because when you look at things like a new series, like even the new series of Thunderbirds, a lot of people, I didn't realise this when I first watched it, but the new series of Thunderbirds, that uses a lot of physical sets. A lot of the things you actually see are model sets with CG overlaid on them, and even a couple of episodes they use the live action hands and things like that, and it proves that it still works. And so the idea of doing that in a figure animation is always the way of thinking. The old methods are sometimes still the best, and you know, it's fine to be inspired by all these, you know, new series episodes with lots of CG and things like that, but when you look at the base techniques used in old filmmaking, they haven't gone anywhere. They've just been updated, you know, if you're a younger viewer certainly who's not seen that many old things like the original Thunderbirds, or you know, hasn't seen early series of Red Dwarf, or even things like, you know, I said, like the model era, the very first couple of series of like Thomas the Tank Engine, even if it's, you know, even if it's sort of thing you think it's a childish program and it's a kids program, you think, why would I watch Thomas? Don't watch it for the show, watch it for the actual physical, you know, models and things like that, and you'll see really how much of it is something that you could easily do on a, you know, on a tabletop. It's just, it takes the dedication to put all of those models together and make it all work. That I think that's the sort of thing that really inspired me. Is it's a labour of love, and it's something which you really do have to put your heart into it. But as I said previously, I've always wanted to make the animation that I wanted to make, and right from the off, that's what inspired me, so that's what I wanted to make. I decided to expand upon the story because, as I said previously, doing Mission to the Unknown, it was doing my own take on it. So all the things like, you know, the Daleks are going to be slightly different, the figures, the spacesuits are going to be slightly different. And so I sort of looked at it and thought, well, it's not going to be a faithful canon representation, regardless of what I do. So I'll run with that and add some extra bits into it. So things like adding the scenes with the Doctor and the companions in the TARDIS, which are just scenes of a Doctor and companion in the TARDIS at stories that, you know, proper stories that were set at the same time as Mission to the Unknown was going on. You just cut, so suddenly I've got some extra scenes which are going to put in a few, you know, even just sort of 5 minutes tops. Suddenly I've got an extra 5 minutes I can add in. But then on top of that, I've also written my own scenes and things like that into them, just original scenes which fit into it, but a couple of them are just sort of some, you know, a bit of just Daleks talking and talking about what's going on and things like that. And then another one, which again I don't want to say too much because I do want it to be a surprise, but I've written in something which will link back to, or link forward to, other Doctor Who stories in a sort of way that, whilst it's not part of the canon, it certainly presents an interesting idea for Mission to the Unknown, and you know, it's something which I'm very interested in doing, and you know, I'm not going to confirm or deny, but or you know, say this is a certainty or that it's not going to happen, but I wanted to add something in as well that may lead to possible future figure animations if I really sort of, if this one's really well received and I really have as much fun as I am doing this one. I'm open to doing more in future, so I wanted to add and expand upon more so I could perhaps set up things for future animations. Even if I don't do them, it's nice that that's sort of in there, and it means that I've added my own twist to things. Well, as I've just said, who knows? There could be. I'm having, as I said, a lot of fun doing this animation, and I don't want to say yes, I'll definitely do more, but I also don't want to turn around and say no, I won't, because I'm doing a whole episode right now, and that's a lot to sort of do. And I think if I had to give a definite answer either way now, which what I say now may not reflect in future, or it may be true of future, so don't take what I say now as a confirmation of anything, but I think about it, what I'm doing at the moment, making a full animation, I think perhaps in future I wouldn't want to animate full missing episodes, but doing perhaps a scene recreation of a show reel of missing scenes, missing story scenes. That idea I like, because the nice thing about it is I've got, like, you know, I've got these Daleks now I've made up for this animation, and they are sort of my own sort of slight take of on a, you know, a classic Dalek and an updated version of, you know, various things. These ones are actually based on Ian Veen's Mission to the Unknown animation. But the nice thing about those is now I've got those, I certainly am open to the idea of, say, doing a showreel of animated scenes from Power of the Daleks, certainly Evil of the Daleks, because one of the things I've wanted to do for many years, and I've drawn up plans, I've just never got around to making it, is making an Emperor, a 5-inch Emperor, or at least a 5-inch scale Emperor from Evil of the Daleks, and so making that, I'd love to be able to put that into an animation perhaps. So yeah, I won't say yes, you can expect some more animations in future, but I won't say don't not expect more animations in future. Or there may be animations, there may not. Time will tell. But in that, it brings to a close part 1 of this making of documentary. Obviously, if you're watching this on my Patreon, then there will probably be a link to part 2 as and when I record it. Part 2, I'm probably actually going to be looking at some of the techniques and things that I use to film, even just doing things like the trailer, because I'm really using very basic techniques. I mean, literally, for example, those that have seen the trailer, the scene at the end with the swivelling Dalek and the zoom, I'm not even joking, that was made using a mix of Blue Tack, Lego and Duplo trains. Very simple stuff, but it's about making something look good using very simple techniques, and so I'm going to sort of be looking into how I'm doing you know, how I'm going to actually be filming it, and then I'll be doing sort of another part on the storyboards about the script, and I really want to sort of get each part an in-depth look at how it's all coming together. So those of you who have enjoyed this on YouTube, please consider supporting the Patreon for this animation, because it really is something which I'm really putting a lot of work into. I'm really pleased with how the project's coming together, and more support is always helpful in terms of being able to afford parts and get the bits I need, and it also helps fund the YouTube channel in general as well. So, as always, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Like, favorite, subscribe, share, it really helps me a lot, and of course be sure to check out the description below for a link to my Patreon. It would mean the world to me if you could support it. I salute you all, and I will see you with another video very soon.